I'm back with coffee. Welcome to the second part of Sew in a Wedding Gown. If you would like to see the first part, which includes creating various mock-up tops of the corset, the voluminous petticoat, and the corselet sewn out of cotton bobinette, please visit the upper left corner. Otherwise, let's begin. I'm finally at a point where a column skirt needs to be draped, and mock-up that is, without any darts in the front or the back, which presents a bit of a challenge because there's not a lot of information online in regards to how to go about it. So I kind of improvised and used the same approach when draping a corset top, which is a lot of stretching and pulling the fabric and manipulating it. Even created a few darts, which are then removed when the skirt is ready to be transferred onto paper. Or more like the darts are completely ignored. Surprisingly, it worked. It looked great for the time being. And so here is where the problem lies. The fabric used to drape the column skirt is cotton canvas, so it's structured very similarly to Duchess silk satin. Same thickness, same weight, I would say. Not a lot of drape, but it fits differently. I don't know why. After the mock-up skirt is carefully transferred to paper, we need underlining, specifically silk organza in our case because it helps the fashion fabric wrinkle less and give it more weight. But first, organza needs to be steamed to prevent future shrinkage. Having a surface that allows you to pin fabric into while transferring pattern pieces is amazing because you can line up the straight of grain perfectly and prevent slippery fabric from shifting. And then the Duchess silk fabric has finally arrived. Yay! My sister's also about to fly in and I needed a dress for her ASAP. Yeah. Please bear with me, we will revisit, or more like go through the entire process all over again. Not a lot of stretching, that's much better.
Yeah. There he comes again. The top is more to my liking, and the shape is what I wanted. And I love the back. Because when you take off the skirt, it's like very plain, so it's nice to have a little beading left from the skirt.
We bought new fabric, new wedding fabric to be exact, because I would say it's my fault due to lack of experience. First of all, I didn't order enough, so the amount of fabric needed to create the voluminous overskirt was not enough. Plus, I have ruined the other dress by sewing it a little too tight. Then when I released it, you could definitely see the stitch marks on the seam line. I love the fact that it came in a roll. I mean, this is so much more comfortable, plus I don't have to worry about the creases. Here we go again. Also steamed on the wrong side to prevent future shrinkage. Make sure that the pattern pieces are all facing in the same direction when they're laid out onto the fabric. And I'll explain later how I went about it in order to utilize as much fabric as possible. The paper pattern is pinned only to the organza layer to keep it in place, and the two layers, organza and Duchess silk satin, are thread traced together. It is especially important to thread mark where the notches are, so that everything lines up when it is sewn. We now want to neatly trim the seam allowance on the column skirt. I think I left over an inch of seam allowance for now. I'm experiencing the deja vu. Where have I done this before? Where have I seen this before? The panels are then pinned at the notches and hand basted. I believe the stitches were made out to be about 1/3 of an inch in length, so not too tight or too loose. Stay still. At this point, I was very paranoid about the skirt fitting my sister correctly, and so I checked and rechecked the fit on a dress form relentlessly. So over here, it could possibly be a little tighter, but then if I do make it tighter, she might have a hard time walking. I need to get out of town in order to buy a few important sewing supplies, but first, let's get going. The skirt is machine stitched and pressed. The seam allowance is pressed open, and rather than gliding the iron over the fabric, you want to press and lift to prevent fabric distortion. Now we need to get rid of the annoying basting thread, because any excuse to visit my second home. San Francisco is amazing to walk by foot, and Britex is super nice and super expensive. And if you're into sewing and in the city, do visit the place, you won't regret it. Okay, next we need to stop by a few more spots for inspiration and then head home. Sound recording failed here, but I'll try to lip sync. I bought bra cups. We'll have to add a bit of padding to those. Some shoulder pads, I'll explain later. And Petersham ribbon for the waistband of the overskirt. I will see you tomorrow, or some other day when I finally find the time to work on the next part. Alright, we need to drape the mock-up of the overskirt now. Using Anastasia's half-circle approach, but adding a bit more panels, to be exact, to create that rococo volume in a silhouette. The overskirt slowly but surely came together, pretty much out of pizza pie shaped panels. I roughly pleated the waistline, which gave me a good understanding of the needed circumference, and fixed the bottom to create a beautiful continuous circle. To help the fabric puff out even more, remember those shoulder pads? They can be placed along the waistline to help with the volume in that area. To help the skirt stand up on the sides. Maybe? Once the mock-up was completed, I went into Illustrator and based on the width and length of the current fashion fabric we bought, drafted a 6-paneled overskirt. Perfected the circle up the hemline and the waistline, especially considering the fact that there needs to be a correct amount of pleats replicating the mock-up. Very important for all the panels to face in the same direction, especially because the fabric has tiny rib texture. So we needed to create a seamless continuation of the texture from one panel to the next. So it was a lot of maneuvering around, but I made it work. Now that we're very much satisfied with the pattern and super confident onto the actual thing. As always, starting with the underlining, which will provide extra structure, I've placed everything and anything that had weight to it onto the paper pattern to prevent it from shifting on the silk organza, and then pinned the paper pattern to the underlining. The 2 layers will stay attached until all of the panels are ready to be sewn. I then marked the seams, never on the actual fashion fabric, and moved on to the next panel. Cut all the panels out with a generous seam allowance. And here it is. The panels are ready to be attached to the actual fashion fabric and treated as one. So here we go. Let's baste all of the layers together. Again, a lot of hand sewing. Thinking that this is too much work for one person is definitely an understatement. But I'm weird, and I love it. Time to sew the 6 panels together. Approaching this as usual, pin, baste, machine stitch, remove basting thread, trim the seam allowance, press, and obviously repeat. Regarding the seam finishes, I've decided to go with the bias-bound binding method, mostly because it works well in medium to heavyweight fabric, and also it's a very pretty finish. Shaeffer has instructions in the Couture sewing techniques book, which are pretty easy to follow, and they worked. So I made a boatload of organza bias tape, which is then aligned along the edge of the seam allowance, pinned like so, and stitched near the edge. Trim the seams to make the width consistent. Flip the organza bias tape. Press. Fold it under the seam allowance. Pin it in place. Machine stitch it no more than 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Trim away the excess organza fabric in the back, and here we are. A very clean and beautiful finish. It was definitely worth it, and I'll probably use it a lot. Alright, so what do we have here? I have sewn 2 sides, attaching 3 panels on each side of the overskirt. I'll show you. So very quickly, I folded the pleats along the waistline. The objective here is to make all of them the same size and to hide the seams where the panels are connected inside the pleats. All of this fabric will then be wrapped around and attached on the inside of the waistband. To create the pleats, I've started working from the center back seam outward and made them out to be 1/2 inch wide. Use pins and a small ruler to mark where the folds need to be, and the pins to hold the pleats in place before everything was hand sewn down. To make the world a whole lot easier, since the skirt is going to be handled quite a bit. And so, as you can see, the petticoat and the overskirt will be attached along the waistline, and then, as I mentioned earlier, the extra fabric will wrap around like so. The skirt was so heavy, and so at this point, the pins were not enough to hold it in place. I didn't do a very good job wrapping the panel around, but it gave me an idea of what the end result will look like. The goal here is to cover the entire inside portion of the skirt with the wrapped around panels, which they are. So happy that there was enough fabric to do so. Okay, so what do we have here? Corset number 1. It's too thin. This is too thick. The fashion fabric, the organza, and then there's also the couture. Here's where I went off tangent and had a brilliant idea to create a stiffer top. One that actually looked like a corset, using actual corset cotton couture as the underlining. But then scratching that idea because it was too much, especially considering the fact that there is a spiral boning corselet underneath it all. So I need to make something that's just right. And so I ordered Gazar, which is triple organza. It's pretty much the same fabric as regular organza, except there's more weight to it. And it's often used as understructure for coats or whatnot, and I'm gonna use it as an understructure for the corset. Here it is. You see how thick it is? So this is how opaque regular organza is, and then this is how opaque Gazar is. It feels kind of like silicone, but it's silk. Like the way it drapes. I don't know, it doesn't feel fabric-y to me. The fabric is a little more obvious than the regular organza. I am going to pin the pattern on the underlining because it will be hidden underneath, and the fabric can handle a bit of needle poking. The corset top panels are once again placed facing in one direction on straight of grain cut out, and with the paper pattern still attached to Gazar fabric is thread traced with the Duchess silk satin. And when the panels are ready to be cut out, do leave a little bit of seam allowance along the neck and the waistline. Stay stitched the neckline to prevent fabric distortion, and we can now attach the panels together. As always, I am starting with the center front and then moving out onto the adjacent panels, if that makes sense, and baste through all 4 layers. Be sure to match at the waistline notches and the neckline. Then machine stitch. Remove the basting thread with a pair of medical, what are they called? Hemostat forceps. Press the seam allowance open on the center 2 panels and to the side on the rest. I trimmed the seams to about 3/8 of an inch with pinking shears, added a tiny reinforcing stitch along the edge, and then a 1/4 of an inch wide horsehair braid will be sewn along every vertical seam line on the seam allowances to further help prevent wrinkling. Typically, this technique is applied to princess seams, but here we are. The seam allowances are pressed to the side opposite of the one chosen in the corselet, and in addition, don't forget to stagger the seams to prevent bulk. And then the herringbone stitch will help hold the seams down, especially when considering the 4-layer thickness the seam allowance creates. And be sure to only pick up the gazar layer, because sometimes you can grab a little too much fabric. There's like this little indentation over here. You can see where the fashion fabric is pulling. It's official, we finally have the corselet, the petticoat, the top, the column skirt, and the outer skirt completed. Is there more? Separately, none of the pieces are permanently attached as of now. Things are still wrinkly, especially the top, but we will get the situation fixed later. A second pair of hands is needed to put the overskirt onto the dress form so that it could sit properly this time around. And also another set of eyes because I've been staring at this thing for too long. Everything felt right, but I needed to figure out exactly where the outer panels of the skirt should fold so that things look cohesive. Oh, and the beading has arrived, but a little later on that.